And while, you know, I grew up in the United States in a very American English speaking place at home, yo vivía en República Dominicana, right? So growing up in this bicultural, bi-literate, bi-everything space, and then absorbing these other cultures too that are present in our country, you know, it just really positioned me, as it does to so many of our students and just even all of us that have that similar immigrant experience, to have a really like interesting way of seeing things. And that is also what pushes me into this work. Growing up in Lawrence, the majority of all of my peers, I mean, we were all Latinos. And of that, it was like, everybody was either Puerto Rican or Dominican. That was it. But all of our teachers were actually white, primarily women, but white people. And I know that growing up, I didn't have the language. I couldn't articulate, ¿qué es lo que está pasando aquí? Where's this tension? But it was just very obvious, you know? It was very obvious that it was race-based. That was the biggest marker of difference. And that there was a tension. There was always algo ahí que no cabía bien in our classrooms. And then I got to high school, which was something that I was looking forward to so much, porque my aunt had been there, my sister had been there, mi mamá trabajaba ahí, mi abuelo había sido maestro, and you know, it was like this, I don't know, it was like a rite of passage for me. I was really excited. Pero Jose, those 4 years were probably the most traumatic in terms of educational experiences. And so I say all of that because, you know, all of those experiences and that history aquí en este país in education is what led me to first say, I will never be in a classroom. I will never go back to a school. And then say, actually, that's the only place I need to be so that I can be the teacher I never had, ¿verdad?
Yeah.
Entonces, nada, me puse a aprender y a estudiar, because, you know, one thing is to critique and say, I know this is wrong, but another is to say, not only do I know it's wrong, but here is a better way. And so me dediqué a eso, to figure out what are the better ways. And I realized that there were many better ways and that many people have been doing this work, and that I could join those communities to contribute, you know?
Me encanta.
Yeah. So dime, ¿qué más tenía que decirte? That was a lot.
No, that was perfect. I mean, recently I posted something on social media that kind of stopped me in my tracks, and it was a Black woman that wrote or said this quotation, that the reason that the work is so difficult is that we've been colonized so much, all of us, even those of us that are Black, Indigenous folks of color, because all of us have been taught by white folks who were taught by white folks, who were taught by white folks, who were taught by white folks. And so that was really, I mean, obviously I knew that, Lorena, but to see it like in writing was really, really interesting for me. So Lorena, one of the reasons that I was so excited to talk to you was that there aren't a lot of us in dual language that are focusing on critical consciousness, on dismantling systems of oppression. And a lot of what we've done has been performative, has been about the multicultural night, has been about the Black History Month event or Hispanic Heritage, which is really for the white folks in dual language programs, or to appease the white folks that are a part of the teaching staff, very performative. And it shocked me, Lorena, that there were so many Latino, LatinX educators in dual language programs that were against the anti-Black movement. And so if you could please, could you talk a little bit about what is it about Colorismo that really doesn't allow us to fully support the Black Lives Matter movement?
Sí, that's like its own webinar, Jose. Pero I think that there are some issues, you know, it's so complicated. Por un lado, you know, we Latinos have and when I say that, I mean like todos los países, ¿verdad? Toditos. We have a very painful, traumatic, and also unique experience with colonization, ¿verdad? Porque en algunos países casi no trajeron, you know, enslaved Africans, right? And in other ones like Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Dominican Republic, and Brazil, that is what became the population. So race as a construct operates one way in those places and operates in another way in different places. And then we all come here to the United States, a donde nos dicen que somos todos iguales. And that's just not the case, ¿verdad? So when we get here as let's say newcomers to this racial binary, which is very much black and white, the question becomes, well, where do you fit in? Y hay muchos de nosotros that unfortunately have said we're white. But you know, the sad thing about that is that white people know very well that we are not. Y cuando llegue ese bote de que de aquí se van todos los que no son blancos, those people are going to end up on that boat too, ¿verdad? And so the rest of us who are like, well, I acknowledge that I am black due to my ancestry, but I'm not African American. Y eso es verdad que no somos African American. They have a unique history that belongs to them en este país, ¿verdad? However, we are members of the diaspora. Y tenemos esa misma sangre de África that flows in them, in us. So there is a unity there. And there are some of us in the Latinx community, particularly those of us from the Caribbean, Brazil, esos países where we've had the most African presence, where for some of us, actually, we have more commonalities with the African American community than we do with some of our other communities. Like, por ejemplo, aquí viviendo en Austin, esto ha sido very different. We've been here for about 6 years, my husband and I. Y, you know, so many people just don't, like, they just don't understand who we are. They're just like, pero ¿de dónde? You know, Dominican Republic. Oh, y eso es como que, you know, we have to say like south of Florida. Oh, you know, because the understanding, the commonality here is Mexicano. Y después you can say other general like Guatemala, and some people might know, ¿verdad? Pero then you get to people like us, y mi esposo que es bien oscuro, and he has locks, and if you don't know that his name is Roberto Germán y que tiene ciudadanía in the Dominican Republic, then you would think his name is, qué sé yo, Andre Jackson, you know? Y así lo tratan, even when he speaks in Spanish. So all of this is to say that I think that when we get here, the diversity that is true to us as a whole region of the world is distilled into this box that we're supposed to check off that says Hispanic or Latino. And that is limiting. And it causes that problematic issue for us to figure out, where do we fit in this community? Because even that box Latino is very limiting, you know, it's very frustrating. Porque, por ejemplo, eso quiere decir that me as a Dominicana, I'm supposed to be and have the same values and same cultural beliefs and needs as, for example, una persona indígena from Chile. Y no es así. They have, you know, respectfully, they might have really specific needs that they have, y yo tengo otros que yo tengo, ¿verdad? So, you know, why should we support Black Lives Matter? First and foremost, because they do, ¿verdad? So just based on this understanding of humanity, and that we see that this particular group is being hunted in the streets, you know, that alone should demand our empathy and solidarity. Pero también, we need to know that they do that on our streets and our countries. Lo hacen allá. When the United States has decided to, you know, invade one of our countries y matar a los revolucionarios de nosotros, Jose, I'm going off, but this is what it is. When they come to our nation, that's what they're doing. Es lo mismo. O sea, que lo hacen allá o lo hacen aquí, we have to stand in solidarity. And that has to be reflected, just to go back to your point of like the generations of teaching, ¿verdad? That motivation, that spirit, that ideology has to be reflected in our curriculum, in our classrooms. Es importante that our students see us, particularly as brown people, but I'll say that, even though I could say Black, but as brown people, saying, no, sin duda, we're in solidarity. Eso cambia todo.
Yeah, I love everything that you're saying, because obviously you and I have very similar ideologies in terms of disrupting and decolonizing schooling systems. I put on. Me está dando calor because I'm getting mad, Jose. Quítate la cámara. Mira, aquí en mi casa hace mucho frío. We like to have it really cold, so I always wear my little hoodies now that I'm comfy at home. One of the things that I uploaded onto social media was this image that's on the screen, because I think that what you just said, so many of us as Latinos tend to forget that that the intersection is there, and we can deny it, but it's still there. Would you mind defining for our guests today exactly what is anti-negritud and colorismo, just in case they don't have a working definition? Because remember that the goal here is that they're going to now go back and cause this madre, whether in the classroom or at the district level or at the school level. So what is the working definition of anti-negritud and colorismo?
Yes. Let me start with racism. Porque, again, we have to remember that we are in this context en este país. A menos de que one of you or many of you are teaching abroad, which is very possible, but I don't think I saw that. So unless you're working outside of the United States, delete what I'm about to say. But here in the United States, right? Porque this is the experience that your students are going to have and that you are having, all right? So first is this understanding that racism is not simply a belief system. No es que yo pienso tal cosa de los inmigrantes. No. Racism is that belief plus power. So it's action. Racism is actions, a set of actions, ¿verdad? So what are the ideologies that inform that racist act? Two of them is what Jose is asking us about. Anti-negritud is anti-blackness. Y eso es literalmente eso. It comes all the way back to, or it originates from colonization, the very beginning of it all, when to be in power meant to be white. ¿Verdad? It meant to be white, and the closer you got to white, your proximity to whiteness is what granted you power. Y eso es colorismo. And that's how we do it in our families. Cuando decimos, ay, pero qué oscurita está la pobre niña. Or I know that I've heard from friends who's, a generation before us, like our parents, a donde mi amiga, por ejemplo, this is personal, pero no voy a decir nombre. Her grandmother le dijo, mira, esconde esa niña por esos primeros 3 meses para ver si se le quita el color y no la salgas al sol, no la saques al sol, right? That is a self-hatred. That's an internalized racism. Eso es colorismo. And we use that term among people of color because we don't really have that institutional power to enact that big systemic racism that happens here. And in the end, we're going to get hurt by it, ¿verdad? It actually turns on us. So colorism is the ways that we create systems of hierarchy among ourselves based on essentially either our proximity to darkness or to whiteness, ¿verdad? Entonces, anti-negritud is that ideology of like, the further you are from that, the better. That's why we straighten our hair. That's why we lighten our skin. That's why we stay out of the sun. That's why we, por ejemplo, los dominicanos, that's why we have all kinds of names except negro. Ella es india, ella es trigueña, ella es marroncita, ella es, it's everything but black. And the lighter you are, the better. So that's like probably the most succinct way I could break that down.
Yeah, you just grew me because I mean I engage in this work and I've been having a little bit of a hard time because I'm coming to realize that so much of my work as a human being and as somebody who's working on academic research has been about how close to whiteness can I be?
Sí.
And I didn't even realize it, even as I was engaging in that work. And so what I love right now that you just said is that for the first time, I'm understanding that the reason that we as a Latinx community, understanding that Latinx is controversial for some, that we in the Latinx community use colorismo is because of the lack of power that would equate it to racism. Sí. So I went like,
Pero mira, let me add to that, ¿verdad? So somebody, I didn't get to read the whole thing, but I saw the term white passing. And that's a thing for us. Por ejemplo, yo ahora trabajando in this white private school, yo veo jovencitos que si yo no me sé que su apellido es Montes de Oca, then I think that her name is Shirley. So we have the ability to do that because we have colonizer blood, because of our ancestry, ¿verdad? So podemos hacerlo. Can we white pass? Absolutely. I still see that as that's a survival tactic. If we did not live in this type of racial binary society, we wouldn't have to do that. We would just claim it and we would be like, sí, pues mi abuela es mexicana y qué. right? Pero ese silencio does help progress because we have proximity to whiteness by doing that. Si yo te enseño una foto de mis hermanos, it's 5 of us, people wouldn't know that we're in the same family. Mi hermana, la más pequeña, parece india, like legit. Like she was, like su abuela era una azteca. Mi hermana, la otra, parece, bueno, dominicana, because she's got all these hips and all this beautiful stuff. Y yo a veces nadie sabe. People are like, are you from India? I'm like, no, dominicana. You know, and then my brothers, el más jovencito es blanco. Nació con pelo rubio, you know? And so today he doesn't have that. His hair's a little darker, pero we have that range. You know, we have that range and that diversity. And that's why for so many, and he's going through his own process. Like, am I white? No, brother. Your name is Javier Jose. You are not white, ¿verdad?
Acento sobre la E.
Correcto. And, you know, so it's such a process for us to navigate this because as, you know, even as I said at the beginning, we grow up in our homes, at least for many of us, para no, you know, generalize, but for many of us in our Latinx homes, with this national, like this home national culture that doesn't talk about race in the way that in this country, ¿verdad? Yo me acuerdo una vez hablando con mi papá, and I said, you know, Dad, we're Black. Like, Dominicans are Black. And he was like, pero yo no sé por qué hay que hablar tanto de eso. Eso es obvio. Eso está en nuestra sangre. And I'm like, yes, but we also have this anti-negritud, so it doesn't make sense. So we have to talk about it, right? And for us Dominicans in particular, we have a very unique situation con Haiti because our anti-negritud is weaved in like this with Haiti. Anti-Haitianismo. It's actually in relationship, which is not the case in other places because nobody else is sharing an island. So anyway, it's super complicated. It doesn't mean that we're like extra racist, which is sometimes how we're portrayed. Y no es en defensa. I'm just saying that Puerto Ricans and Cubans and Brazilians are also equally racist. Like we just get to have an extra complicated layer. ¿Verdad que sí?
No, I like that.
Yeah, so I'll stop.
No, that was awesome, Lorena. So you have never been to a training with me. I talk about my abuelita Juanita a lot. She was really inspirational to me. She actually taught me that lo que se dice se hace. It's the motto by which I live in. It's my first book of poetry for children in both languages. Like she is so important to me. But the last about decade of her life, we engaged in a lot of conversations about Colorismo because she was really, really dark, but yet she always taught us if she saw a Black man specifically coming towards her, she would hold on to her purse or she would hit the button in the car. Like, I don't know if you remember the old-fashioned cars that had the little botoncito. Like if your kids were inside, you would have to get the wire hanger to get it out. Remember?
Yep, I got you.
So Lorena, that impacted me because about 5 years ago, we lived in Silver Spring and I went to CVS and it was getting dark to get some medicine and 2 Black kids were coming my way. And Lorena, I literally
did it.
And tightened my side saddle.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? Really? Right. You engage in this work and this is what you're doing. So I asked myself the 4 reflection questions that I use, which is who are you not? What do you believe in? What do you need to do to others? And so I released my hand and I said, good evening. And then they said, good evening, sir, which of course me sacó de onda because I'm young, so they shouldn't have said sir.
Because they're wrong, obviously.
Exactly. But I say that, Lorena, because that feeling is in all of us. So my next set of questions really focus on the classroom because one of the things that I think that you bring to the game that's very different and so valuable is that you focus on literacy and you have this awesome resource that I actually included a picture somewhere in here that I would love for you to talk about. The Antiracist Teacher. So tell us, like, how do the rest of us, I mean, I know how we do it in dual language, but how do we include the work that you're doing in terms of being an anti-racist teacher?
Yeah. So this workbook came out of me sitting in a bunch of PDs, first of all, knowing that I could lead the PD, but whatever, that's a whole nother thing. Pero sitting there and hearing people talk about very important things, conceptual stuff though, ¿verdad? Esto es este concepto. This is this big idea. This is this framework. And I was still, at the end of that PD, I would hear my colleagues like, okay, but what does that look like in practice? Like literally, what tomorrow morning at 8:30 es lo que voy a hacer o no hacer? And so después de tanto tiempo, I said, you know what, let me just start writing these things down. Y empecé a sentarme. And Jose, it was just coming and coming. And it was crazy. This workbook was a very like, actually spiritual experience, which is, we don't have time for, but it was very much something que yo no podía, y me despertaba temprano, y no dormía, because it was all just coming out. And so that workbook is specifically for reading instruction, which I think could benefit this group, since I know that that's part of the dual language work, ¿verdad? Es enseñar phonics, but also like decoding and reading. So even though I don't get into decoding, it is very much about literature, but it's all about the steps and the process. Like, how do you actually implement anti-racist concepts in pedagogy? So it's a workbook. So you're not going to get too much lecturing from me. It's a lot of mira esto, piénsalo, and here's one strategy that you can do in its place. So yeah.
I love it. In dual language, what we use is culture learning targets.
Okay.
Because culture learning targets really focus on 4 things. 1, amplifying the voices of marginalized communities.
Mm-hmm.
2, connecting to the student to enter to the real world. 3, focusing on cross-linguistic connections and translanguaging, que puedan utilizar el repertorio lingüístico entero. And then the 4th way to write a culture learning target really focuses on academic and social language being equals, because, you know, we're such linguist haters
Right.
as well. Es colorismo, clasismo, es opresión lingüística.
It's all together, yeah.
And so I think it actually fits really well, because if we're working to be anti-racist, it doesn't matter whether we're serving in a monolingual setting, an ESL setting, a transitional bilingual, or a dual language setting. Mm-hmm. It is about empowering students to see themselves and to amplify the voices of those whose voices have been marginalized, ¿verdad?
Yep. Yep.
¿Nos puedes explicar poquito de los talleres de capacitación que estás haciendo? Yeah. Because that really interests me, and yeah. I'd love to find the connection between dual language and what you're doing, because I know that it's there.
Yeah. And one more thing, antes de que se me olvide, I am actually going to be translating this book into Spanish. Voy a trabajar con una amiga que se ha ofrecido, so for those of you that want that, you'll get it. No sé cuándo. I can't put a date because that's a lot of work.
Yes, but you said it out loud. You said it out loud, and Juanita heard you from up above. And lo que se dice se hace. Así
lo que se dice se hace. I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it. Gracias a tu abuelita.
Now
so we're going to do it.
I'm going to have to send you a picture so that you know what she looks
like. Ay, hombre, que...
You're next, si no has hecho el trabajo, eh?
Okay. It'll be an accountability thing. Okay. So yeah, so this will be in Spanish pronto. So the workshops, I do a lot of different types of workshops. I'll talk a little bit about Disrupt Text. So with Disrupt Text, it's 4 of us. En total, las 4 somos women of color, and we're all in the field of English. So literature, literacy, and our goal really is to push the field of English instruction to re-envision, replace, reimagine what we call the canon, ¿verdad? Everybody in the United States se graduó de high school, you know, having read one of, let's say, these 10 books. We all know Catcher in the Rye, To Kill a Mockingbird, Great Gatsby, todos esos. And are there some things, like, are some of those books inherently wrong? Some of them are, and they need to be put away, closed with a lock on the door. Pero hay otros que no es que sean terribles. Lo que pasa es that you are considered cultured and intelligent and a graduate of the high school if you read just those books. And none of those authors are people of color. And 2 are women, usually of that list, okay? So our goal is to say, ¿cómo va a ser that since 1960-something, no one else has written anything that is worthy of academic study that we can say young people need in order to have you know, cultural wealth? Because that's always the argument. Ay, es que there's so many Shakespeare jokes. Ay, ya, me cansé de Shakespeare, por favor. Ya. You know, so our argument is there are voices that need to be in our classrooms. There are conversations that we need to be having, and there are books with better topics that we need to be addressing, right? So that's one of the things that I'm doing. And then so there's the NCTE, I don't know how many of you know about it, but the National Council of Teachers of English. Y ellos tienen un comité that se llama Committee Against Racism and Bias in the Teaching of English, and I'm leading that comité. And through that committee, what we're doing is just creating a lot of content for teachers, particularly in the field of English. So, definitely lists, pero también strategies. That's what I feel like has been lacking in this work at the practical K through 12 level. Vemos muchos libros with big ideas, which are important. And what they miss is, okay, what does that mean at 8:30 Monday morning? And that's the answer that I'm trying to, or the question that I'm trying to answer through my work. So my workshops are about how do we turn these frameworks and these ideas, particularly the one that I'm grounded in, a culturally sustaining pedagogy by Dr. Paris and Dr. Aline. And I'm working on, continuing to work on what does that, stance, that pedagogical stance, what does that mean in my practice? Y tengo un libro que viene por ahí, José, no sé cuándo se va a escribir,
I know.
Pero se va a escribir en algún momento. It's due, I think it's going to come out next fall with Heinemann. And it's essentially me saying, this is how I implement CSP, culturally sustaining pedagogy, in my classroom to deal with social justice, like how I teach about social justice and how I get my young people to think about it and act towards it in the English classroom. Porque no hay que hacer una cosa diferente, ni irse para otra escuela. You can do it right where you are. And there are limitations for some of us, ¿verdad? Pero aunque sea un chin, as Dominicans say, un chin chin is better than nothing.
Absolutely. And for the group, I want you to know that Lorena and I have been chatting, obviously, and I shared with her the C6 by Literacy Lesson Planning Framework, which many of you are familiar with because it was created specifically for dual language. And it is lesson planning through an equity and social justice lens. And Lorena and I are finding commonalities because obviously there's all of this intersection in terms of what we're both doing, just targeting different groups. And so I'm really excited about that. Lorena, I also wanted to, we got a question via email in terms of leadership at the school level and how can we engage in this very important work to target colorismo, to target anti-negritud, anti-bias, anti-racism, critical consciousness, sociocultural competence, especially if your leadership is hesitant. And I wanted to start off that question by letting you know, Lorena, that one of the things that stays really clearly in my mind was visiting a school in DC. The school is called Mundo Verde, and the pre-K teachers had actually disrupted and decolonized their standards, the early childhood standards, and they did a unit on anti-negritud and colorismo through the life of Celia Cruz.
Wow.
In pre-K, in a language classroom. And so just knowing that it can be done, but we need that leadership to come on board. So any suggestions?
So is this the question, like, how do I do it when they don't support me, or how do I get them to support me?
I think the second.
Okay.
Like how are you able to get them to? And then if it's not happening, then what do we do? Because I know what I suggest, but I want to hear what you suggest as well.
So how to get them to jump on board? Eso no es fácil. Because it really depends on a lot of things. Sometimes administrators, so quote unquote, in defense of administrators for a second, hay muchos that don't have the autonomy that we think they have, ¿verdad? So they are facing pressure from district leaders and whoever their supervisors are in the most oppressive spaces. I'm thinking about like the most oppressive districts a donde te dicen hasta que te tienes que poner para trabajar, ¿verdad? So when I think about those districts and those school systems, those administrators don't really have that much autonomy. So, you know, in that case, they might even be on board with you, but just not be able to do anything about it. So in a case like that, you might get away with doing some of that work in your room, ¿verdad? Yourself. So there's that scenario. Then there's the scenario of the ones who do have autonomy, y es que simplemente they haven't done their own work to know that this matters, that this is important, and that this is the future of education, and this is the need for now. And I think one of the ways to get those people unfortunately, and I hate it, de verdad que lo odio, is to present them with a sense of urgency. Hay que darle razón. You gotta light a fire, and you have to do that through evidence. So maybe, you start, the things that you've heard young people say, you go back to young people and say, I'll sit with you, but you need to go tell the principal, vamos, yo te ayudo. What's terrible about that is que, then young people have to, and adults and whomever have to continually talk about the problem and say it over and over again. Ese es el problema, ¿verdad que sí? But once this administrator sees like, oh, es que this racism or this issue no está allá, está aquí, está en mi oficina, está in my building, I have to do something. Y ahí tú te presentas y dices, hi, I have an idea. I have a potential solution, ¿verdad que sí? And that leadership too, in supporting these community members to come forth with what their problems are, is going to be a model for your colleagues and is a model for your students. And it builds community because now you have a community of people that you're aiding and helping. So, I mean, that's just one way, Jose, que me llega a mente.
No,
that's what I've had to do.
Me encanta, Lorena. And I think that especially with the work that you're doing in terms of your PD, but also like the anti-racist teacher workbook, like that allows the teachers, even if you have all of these outside forces that are working against you, if I can at least lesson plan through a decolonizing lens, then I can have an impact with the students that I personally serve at minimum, which is
correct.
At minimum, which is what the C6 lesson planning framework does as well, which is what your workbook does, which is what culture learning targets also allow us to do. The other thing that I would say, Lorena, and you know that I'm a former administrator, but I think that a lot of times we as, especially those of us that are teachers of color, we have compartmentalized ourselves so much to be white adjacent that we forget that we are the solution that we continue to seek. And so one of the things that I share with dual language teachers, for example, but it's with any teacher of color, is that we have to create our space in leadership because we have to stop complaining about principals and assistant principals and coordinators and superintendents that don't get it. Like, no one ever told me as a queer, Chicano, Spanglish speaking language learner, you should be an AP. It was my husband who said, you keep doing all of this additional work for your administrators. Why aren't you just holding their position? And how sad is it that many of us have never heard that you're the freaking solution? And so right now.
And that you're doing the work.
Yes, yes. Que les paguen y tener poder. Like we need folks of color. We need women, queer folks, Spanglish speakers, other language speakers. Like we need women and folks that aren't at the table in those positions, because remember that white heterosexual males are the ones that hold those positions, and white heterosexual males are going to mentor white heterosexual males.
That's right.
And so we have to break that cycle. Así es que nada de excusas. It means that those of us that don't have an admin certification, we need to go get it. And those of us that don't have a doctoral degree, we need to go freaking get it, because that's the way that we get into the space to create this madre.
Sí.
Ay, Lorena, you and I are going to have to like hang out.
Yeah.
We'll have like a margarita or something.
Sí, por lo menos una.
Well, I know that we're going to be getting together to discuss more things, but I do want to leave a little bit of time for questions and resources. And so my question to you is, can we talk a little bit about resources? I shared, obviously, your reading instruction workbook, but I also put on this slide something that you posted on social media, because
Qué locura eso, ¿verdad?
I want to talk about this right before we talk about resources, because I thought this was so important that you posted this on social media. And this is Pearson, right?
This is Pearson, el cual, listen, whatever, that's a whole other workshop. Pero yeah, so this was actually this is a textbook in the medical field. Yes, feel free to annotate and cross things out. That's usually what I do, or put angry faces. Or I'll just write like no very big when I'm annotating sometimes. But anyway, this is one page of this chart that they had. And this is like, basically, yes, si ves el título, focus on diversity and culture. So that's supposed to be like, you know, let's talk about all of it here in one place. Cultural differences and responses to pain. O sea que cuando nosotras o nosotros los hispanos llegamos al hospital.
O nosotres.
O nosotres. Thank you. I'm learning.
Me too.
O nosotres llegamos al hospital. They're gonna, you know, the doctor has been told, or the nurse, because this is a nursing textbook, has been told Hispanics, they believe that pain is a form of punishment and that suffering must be endured if they are to enter heaven. Oye, de verdad que when I saw this, I said, no, pero es que como, pero. And so up until 2017, this was being used.
And obviously this exists in the textbooks. It's not just for the medical field. It exists in the textbooks that are being force-fed into our classrooms. Perfecto.
And so lo que yo dije, Jose, what I said on social media about it is that, you know, that's why the work that we're doing in K through 12 is so important, to teach young people a critical lens for reading, to understand what racism looks like in print, what bias looks like in language, para que vean eso y en su clase, en la universidad o en postgraduate, digan, pero ¿qué es esta locura? Hasta los mismos blancos que digan, this sounds wrong to me, and demand that that professor answer. Why are you using this textbook, you know, etc.
I love that you say that our white friends are a part of the system, because I've had white friends that say, you know, like, I don't know if I belong in dual language, or I don't know if I belong in anti-bias, anti-racism work.
Listen, your ancestors did it. You're supposed to be leading this, not me. Hello.
And we can't do it alone. Like, the more privilege that we bring into the space, the more that we're able to disrupt.
Absolutely.
So I shared this on social media, but I wanted to share some other resources, Lorena. I know that you wrote some things down. So what are some of the resources that teachers might utilize? And then we'll answer a couple of questions as well.
Ay, Dios mío, so much stuff. There are a number of, well, I guess it depends. There are ways to think about this. Is the resources that I put in my students' hands, ¿verdad? So what are the actual books that I'm incorporating into my curriculum? And there is a million lists flying around. There's one that my committee just put out, the NCTE committee. I'll find it and put a link in the chat for all of you, okay? But it's a list of books that can be used, that specifically can be used for conversations about race in the classroom from, is it pre-K? I think we did do pre-K. Or maybe, I don't know, me acuerdo. But definitely, you know, all the way up until high school. And then there's the resources that as a teacher I consume, that I can see that, you know, what can inform me so that I can do this work better. I got some titles. I'm just gonna spew them out. And if people want, they can, or I can type as I'm talking.
No, Lorena, don't type it in. Last time we were here, somebody was like, who's Dr. Medina, are you gonna create a list? And I said, don't be coming into our Black Indigenous people's space and asking us to do more. Somebody can go ahead and type in the little chat box. So
mira, hay uno que estoy leyendo ahora mismo. I'm walking through uno que se llama Cultivating Genius. Y la persona es Goldie, Gholdy Muhammad. Y ese libro me lo encuentro tan interesante, and it has sparked for me like a research idea. So basically, in short, ella habla sobre the literacy practices of African Americans in the 19th century, and how essentially we should just be going to that to use our framework for teaching. And she breaks it down into strategies. Pero, you know, it's made me think too, like, well, how did our societies, particularly the indigenous ones in todos nuestros países, like, what did they do for literacy? What counted for them? How did they express their intellect and their knowledge and culture? And like, what we could incorporate some of that too. So estoy pensando en eso. So there's that book. Hay otro que, déjame ver,
you mentioned Paris's work.
So
have you read Culturally Sustaining Pedagogy?
Sí, Culturally Sustaining Pedagogy. The authors are Paris, like the city in France, and Alim, A-L-I-M. And CSP is not about strategies, but I think it's very helpful because it is about framework, and it is about the attitude with which you're walking into your classroom. Okay, and so what does it mean to come in and teach in a way that sustains, not just relates to or responds to student culture, but sustains their culture? That's a really important point.
And just so that you know, Lorena, we talked a little bit about this, but in the C6 by Literacy lesson planning framework, we used culturally responsive pedagogy,
Yeah.
but that's changing for the book, because the book is coming out next year. And so it's actually moving to culturally sustaining pedagogy, which makes much more sense.
And it's not that responsive or relevant or bad. Incluso la persona que diseñó Relevant, Dr. Gloria Latin Billings, ella está en ese libro in CSP. And she was like, yeah, this is the direction we need to go. She's a mentor of them. O sea, que hay relación ahí. This is not a disrespect to that work. It's a building of. Yeah,
and Lorena, the reason that I shared this here on the screen is that one of my really good friends and colleagues, Mario Palma, he serves for American Reading Company. They vetted this list of children's books, and it's focusing specifically on Afro-Latinidad. And so that's the reason why I shared it, because I wouldn't share just a list, pero es algo que Mario and American Reading Company really did. I also shared this. I don't know if you read this from Hip Latina, but I thought that it was very interesting article. And I loved it because it was really now and really, no con la teoría, pero con la verdad, like very transparent and very honest. And also giving us strategies to really engage in conversations with our own family, because our own family is a big mess. Can you imagine if Juanita had passed away and I didn't teach her about the cultural proficiency continuum? No manches, wait. Like, she needed to die, but knowing if she was going to pass away, she needed to be working on her cultural sustaining pedagogies, ¿verdad? So this one was really good.
También está it's a company called LiLo Books, and I'm sure some of y'all have heard of it. So LiLo Books y también the Brown Bookshelf. Both of those companies have a lot of books, and they actually feature some Afro-Latino books too. También está Arte Público Press, and they have a lot of books featuring Latinos and a number of them which are brown and or black. And so, immediately that just welcomes that conversation and normalizes the idea that there are dark-skinned Latinos, ¿verdad? Porque si vemos Univision, then I don't exist. Ni tú tampoco, José, porque nos quedamos fuera. You know? And so we have to unfortunately create what's called a counter-narrative, ¿verdad? And it's like, yeah, that's one narrative, but actually that's incomplete. And here is how we're going to complete it. Here's the other side to that. ¿Tú sabes?
Absolutely. Lorena, there's a question that has come up over here in the chat that I really would love to ask you about.
Yeah.
So Ofelia Garcia, Dr. Ofelia Garcia is one of my heroes. And you notice that in the C6, we talk a lot about academic and social language are equals, and the whole notion of translanguaging. And when a Puerto Rican person says, voy a coger el lápiz, we should not freak out because it's a gorgeous word. And so how does colorismo and clasismo as well, how does that play a role in terms of language oppression, especially by the dialects and the language used by those of us that perhaps are darker?
Sí, exacto. I mean, that's the answer, right? You said it. So because of issues of race in our home country, we've associated certain languages, or certain dialects and forms of expression and even words with particular groups of people within our own communities. And so si alguien dice, por ejemplo, I don't know, coger, fine. For Puerto Ricans, Dominicans use that word too, ¿verdad? Voy a coger el teléfono, or whatever. Voy a coger ese lápiz, or whatever. It becomes associated to a certain level of class, and therefore, which I know you talked about, intellect, ¿verdad? Because I'm this worker at this level, therefore I must not know, which we know is complete, ridiculousness, porque sabemos que hay personas sumamente inteligente that are working whatever they're working in, right? And that's much more of a circumstantial thing, and sometimes choice. So there's a very clear association that then we bring with us, whether we are adult immigrants or we were raised with that. Like, I know I was raised with that. In mi familia growing up, everybody was educated in their home country. Mi abuelo era ingeniero. Mi abuela had worked in the Department of Education, Ministro de Educación in the Dominican Republic. So education was a big deal in my house. And how you articulated your thoughts and the words you used and your position and language is very important. And it was a sign of, this person is therefore mature in this family. I will listen to your advice. It granted us access to adulthood even, ¿verdad? So for a number of us, that's the reality. And so when we're in our classrooms and we hear some students that can articulate themselves in their proximity to castellano, ¿verdad? Ese español de allá de España, the closer you are, then the much more intelligent you are, the more potential you have, the more everything that you have. And then that student may or may not like already be closer to an A, you know, han hecho trabajo, right? So that is some of our own decolonizing that we have to do.
So a follow up on that question, Lorena, because I want you to cause desmadre with this group. We have over 300 folks here, and I don't know who yet. I should look through the little boxes because Juanita gave me the power to see through the eyes who does this. But there's at least one teacher here who still thinks, no, pero mi trabajo es enseñar el español académico.
Sí.
Like there's somebody here that's like, right now they are freaking out because you use vela and because I will say pos. Like we are driving them crazy. And I want you to know that it gives me great joy and it gives great joy to Lorena. So how do you tackle teachers that are still misunderstanding the whole point? Oh, español académico, academic English.
Exactly.
Tell them, Lorena.
Exactly. So, bueno, that's a lot. But I think one way to tackle that is to have explicit conversations with young people about language as a tool. Language is a tool, okay? It is not a measurement of your intellect, but it's a thing that you use to get around. Meaning you might use it to get around in your career, to get around at home, and you have a repertoire. You don't just have one fork and knife. Tú tienes a whole tray of fork and knives. And so therefore you are blessed and intellectual and very smart and have cultural wealth. And so pick and choose considering context. Cuando yo le estaba enseñando a los, you know, I told you that I started, so my teaching career began at my high school, the one where I said earlier that was traumatizing, porque así es, Juanita parece. And she sent me right back there. And so I had to start there. And it was my own healing process, but it was also, you know, like as I was looking at students, I was like, yo, you were me. Like literally, you were me. And so I remember having to talk to them and say, listen, el español que ustedes hablan es buenísimo. There's no problem, que chévere. And I want to show you another Spanish that you can choose to use whenever you want. And here are some of the places where that gets used. And they're like, oh, sí, para aplicar al trabajo. Oh, yeah, that could be a good place to use it. But oh, what about after I get the job? Do I still have to use it? That's up to you. You have the choice to do that because you can actually switch. You can meld. Tú puedes hacer lo que tú quieras. So, but that's the thing, right? In order to say, hey, I'm going to teach academic English today, whatever, ¿verdad? Vamos a decir, that has to be something that students understand. Like they have to understand what you're doing. When I'm teaching, for example, how to write a college essay, well, no, that one's a little different. But let's say like a traditional academic 5-paragraph stupid essay. Yo le explico a los estudiantes, just so you know, this is not the standard of writing. This is not the only, if you go read the New York Times, they are not writing to you in 5 paragraphs, all right? It might be 3, and it might be 17. So we're using this so that we learn one way to write an essay that is valued in this country. Porque eso es otra cosa, que entiendan that we're talking about the United States. Si tú te vas para Sweden and you give them a 5-paragraph essay, that might be an F because that's not even how they write. So I need them to also be global-minded, ¿verdad? And that's part of the conversation. I think that if teachers want to say, mira, este español, y está este español, y está, you know, this other, whatever, slang, as people, whatever you want to call it, but people have, young people are mature and ready enough to know, ellos no son recién nacidos, right? Like they're teens or even pre-Kers. They know when to speak up and when not to, and when some words are okay. And, you know, like there's potty words and there's backyard words and there's an inside voice and an outside voice. So they have a concept for this. Y más lo que son bilingüe. They know that it's like milk and leche. That's 2 ways to talk about the same thing. So as they're growing up, you can say, here's an English for this type of space and here's an English for another type of space. They can do that.
You would be very, very happy, Lorena, because I see some teachers in this space who I've been blessed to actually visit classrooms. I see some directors who I've done walkthroughs with, and there are teachers here that you could walk into their classrooms and you could ask their kindergarten kids.
Yes.
Oye, ¿qué es el translenguaje? And
Yes.
the 5-year-olds will say, es que
Claro.
tengo la mano de inglés, tengo la mano de español, lo conecto
Sí.
con el puente, me pongo el puente en la cabeza.
¡Ay!
En inglés, lo sé en español y lo que sé en español lo sé en inglés. Y que si digo mucho, o que si digo pos, o que si digo popote, pónganlo en la tabla de regionalismos. Like, I see some teachers here that their kids know more about anti-bias, anti-racism work, about translanguaging than even some of the adults that are guiding
Some
them.
of their own colleagues, ¿verdad? Yes, right.
Yes. So
Yeah.
we have one last question that
Okay.
we have time for, and the question is about Spanish resources, and I'll let you see if you can answer that, and I have an answer as well, and then we'll wrap it up. Se nos fue la hora así.
Like, what is the question? Like, in Spanish?
Resources or books that you might recommend in Spanish, and I mean, obviously, we know there's a lot of work to be done in that area.
Yes, there is a lot. Because I haven't dedicated the last several years to that, de verdad que no me llega nada en mente. Pero that's why those publishers that I mentioned, like Arte Público Press, they have a lot of books, particularly for children, that are in Spanish. So I wonder if that's what they mean.
Arte Público Press, if somebody will write it on the...
Yeah, Arte Público Press, they're local. They're here in Texas, and they focus mainly on authors of color. So they have a number of things in Spanish. You know, también está, bueno, I don't know. I guess I wouldn't know, Jose. Maybe you can help me here.
Yeah, I can help you on this. So one of the posts that I actually did was from another university professor that is actually has vetted a lot of materials. And so one of the things that I did is if you go to my Twitter or my Instagram in June, I posted it, but I'll repost it again this weekend. But it is tons of resources in Spanish, including articles, including videos, including books, including short stories, things that you can share with your families and communities. And I actually wanted to share one little thing, Lorena. There's this video that was in that list that this fellow colleague compiled. And give me 1 second to stop the share. Let me exit my PowerPoint. A ver, ¿por qué no está sucediendo? Here we go. Because this video is one that I think people should see. So
Sí, sí.
this video shows us, it's in Spanish, and it shows us that at a very young age,
pero es nuevo entonces, right?
there are some white ones. This is in Mexico. It was released by the Department of Education in Mexico. But these kids in Mexico are already identifying that, that they don't want to be dark. So I will post that again, Lorena. I will post that again this weekend. But I just want to thank you so much, Lorena. Like, I am so in love with you, and not in a weird way. Like, I'm in love with you as a human being, as a fellow chingon, a chingona, somebody that is unafraid as a person and woman of color to demand the...
Mira, a veces I'm afraid. De veras, a veces I'm afraid, pero hay que seguir para adelante because, dime.
Palante, did y'all hear that? Palante is gorgeous. Everybody, if you could unmute yourself and just help me in thanking my friend Lorena Germán. Un aplauso.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Lorena.
Gracias, Lorena.
Muy bien, gracias.
Lorena, I am going to continue this series.
You guys rock.
Pa'lante. Gracias.
That's right.
Lorena, I'm going to continue this
Adelante,
series
everybody.
because I couldn't believe that some of the major dual language organizations just didn't. And and we need it. So just as an FYI, we're going to continue. We're going to do a session on LGBTQ+.
Oh, yeah.
A session on immigration and DACA, because all of that is anti-bias, anti-racism work. And so I hope that you all continue to join me so that we can invite guests like Lorena to cause desmadre in the name of equidad and social justice.
Yes, yes.
Nos vemos.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for, this great chat. I didn't see everything, pero vi muchas cosas and a lot of questions about popote. I'm not sure what that is yet. Pero...
Jose, are you gonna? Jose, will you join us in February for the Black Lives Matter Week of Action at through the BTU?
I would love to. Send me the information. I'm all about it. It has to be the work.
Can you tweet me at King Joel 4 on Twitter? So
I have so many messages. Would you just put it in the chat and I will make sure to follow up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Jose. You got to be a part of it. It's a bilingual.
Thank you. Yeah. Adios, everybody. Have a good weekend. And as you celebrate the July 4th weekend, remember that not everyone has freedom. That's right. Remember how this country was created.
Right.
Okay.
We need to all be free.
Wear your masks.
Wear your mask.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.